Chapter 31, My Rosie. My popularity at Clemente grew, not because I was an academic standout or a jock, but because I was a Latin king. I enjoyed the way crowds in the hallways would part when I would walk through. No matter how long the cafeteria line was, I could be first if I wanted to. I could sit in the stairway, smoke a joint, and be warned of any authority figure coming. It never crossed my mind that it was others' fear that made me popular. I never bothered to consider the consequences. I rarely attended classes anymore. I went to school for the sole purpose of gangbanging. The one class I did attend every day was homeroom. That's where I could confront Rosie without her being able to walk away. Rosie was not impressed by my popularity. She still avoided me, but Sheena became more friendly. Sheena would give me invitations to parties and volunteered to be my tutor if I needed one. She was one of the top students at Clemente and was involved in many activities. I kept asking Rosie out on dates and she kept turning me down. One day, however, everything changed. Rosie came to class and, instead of avoiding me as usual, she sat next to me. It was a Monday after a weekend of gang activity against the disciples. I didn't have rolling papers to smoke my customary joint before class, so I was in my normal state of mind when Rosie approached me. She asked how my weekend went. I just stared at her, swallowing saliva, surprised she was even talking to me. I didn't know what to say to her. I just sat there staring at her like a fool. Rosie took the initiative and did all the talking. She told me that her friend Sheena never stopped talking about me, and because of that, she realized how cute I really was. I was speechless. At first, I thought she was going to try to set me up with Sheena. Rosie said that she wanted to see more of me and that she was sorry for being so rude. She promised it would never happen again. We met each other after school and she wanted me to walk her home. She told me she lived on Rockwell and Potomac Streets. I explained that I couldn't walk her home because she lived in Disciples' territory. She kept insisting, "If you really liked me, you would walk me home," Rosie said. I pointed out that if she really liked me, she wouldn't ask me to endanger my life. She was upset and disappointed, but she understood. We kissed and she went on her way. Her kiss was more cold than passionate, but I figured it was better than none at all. The relationship between me and Rosie flourished. At school, we became inseparable, and after school, our passion took over. Within 2 weeks, we became sexually active. Rosie said having sex with me was her way of showing me that she would die for me. She wanted me to know that I was the most important person in her life. Making love to me was her way of telling me. We made love every day. We talked about having a family and a successful future together. Still, Rosie would become very upset when it was time for her to go home and I wouldn't walk her home. She knew that it was out of the question, yet she kept insisting. My life began to revolve around that girl. I stopped going by Cadetsy and Armitage to hang out during the week. I only went on weekends when I couldn't see Rosie and for the mandatory meetings. I used schoolwork as my excuse for not hanging out. I avoided Cubana. I didn't want to do anything that would jeopardize my relationship with Rosie. Rosie made me feel special, like a true king. I started thinking of ways to walk her home without being noticed by the Cobras or the disciples. I knew I would be in danger, but I thought that Rosie was well worth it. Rosie would assure me that nothing would happen because her brother was a disciple and she had talked to him. He promised to cover for me as long as I went inside her house once I got to Rockwell and Potomac. Rosie told me her birthday was on the upcoming Tuesday, so it would be celebrated the Saturday before with a party at her house. She thought that it would be the perfect time for me to meet her family. I couldn't agree more. That Friday, the day before the party, we went to the movies and then to Maria's apartment. It was the first time Rosie was with me at night. She would usually go home just before nightfall. Maria had gone out, so we had the apartment all to ourselves. After smoking a joint, Rosie became very seductive. She told me over and over how much she loved me and how she couldn't wait for her parents to meet me. She said she wanted to have a baby with me and be with me forever. It felt so good. I felt so wanted. We made love with more passion than ever before. I was in love. When it was time for Rosie to go home, I told her I would walk her all the way this time. She preferred that I'd wait the following day so that her brother could be aware I was coming. As usual, I walked her to Western Avenue in Potomac. On the way there, we talked about our future, where we would live, how many kids we would have, and what we would name them. Before Rosie went home, she made me a promise that I would go to her birthday party. She made it clear that if I did not go, our relationship would have to end. After she said that, we kissed passionately and we went our separate ways. I immediately started making plans to go to Cadezi and Armitage on Sunday and quit the Kings. I would use school as the reason. I knew I would have to take an ass whipping to get out, but Rosie was worth it. Our future together was much more important to me than being a Latin king. On Fridays, I would usually go to Cadezi and Armitage, get high, and get rowdy with my king brothers. Not this Friday. I went back to Maria's apartment and fell asleep thinking about Rosie, our wedding, our future family, and how much fun her party was going to be. It was going to be a night to remember. Yeah, I bet it will. I would never meet her parents and assure myself a permanent place in their family. I had to be on my best behavior. In my mind, I repeatedly went over what I was going to say and how I would say it. Rosie was the girl of my dreams, and she was going to give me the opportunity to make my dreams come true. I had to make the most of it. From the moment I got up Saturday morning, I began preparing for the party. I pressed my best shirt, my best slacks, and shined my shoes until they looked like mirrors. I asked Maria for a few dollars and got a haircut. I was determined to make a good impression on Rosie's family. After the haircut, I went back to Maria's and sat around impatiently waiting for nightfall. I planned to leave for the party at 8 p.m. I began getting dressed at 5 p.m. I was in the bathroom doing and undoing my hair, looking for that perfect hairstyle, when Maria knocked on the door and said someone was here to see me. I went out into the hallway and found Sheena standing there, reading all the graffiti on the walls. Her eyes were red and her face was flushed as if she had been crying. I was surprised to see her. I invited her in. She said she couldn't stay long because her mother was outside waiting for her. Inside, Sheena looked deep into my eyes and began to cry uncontrollably. She was trying to say something, but because of her crying, I could not make out what she was saying. Maria gave her some tissue and looked at me as if to say, "What did you do to her?" but remained silent. Suddenly, Sheena reached out, grabbed my arms and said, "Please, don't go to the party. It's a setup." I knew it. I pushed her away and yelled, "What the hell are you talking about? Rosie does not love you. She does not even like you. She's with you because you are a king. She's setting you up to be killed." I freaked out. I did not believe her. I told Sheena that Rosie and I were in love, and she was just jealous. Sheena told me that Rosie's real boyfriend was a disciple, and that she was setting me up to prove her devotion to him. She said that Rosie having sex with me was not part of the plan, but that she did it to convince me that she cared for me in order to get me to go by Rockwell and Potomac. Everything Sheena said sounded logical, but I didn't believe it. Maybe I just didn't want to believe it. I became upset at the accusations against Rosie and lashed out in anger. I had to defend Rosie. After all, she was the sweetest, most beautiful, and most passionate girl I had ever met. I told Sheena to shut up and get the hell out of Maria's place. Maria came to Sheena's defense. "Listen to her, you dummy. She just may be telling you the truth," Maria said. I yelled, "She likes me and wants to break me and Rosie up. That's why she's doing this." Sheena grabbed me again and told me that Rosie didn't care about me, that she wanted me dead. She kept begging, "Please, don't go to the party. Please don't." I pushed Sheena away, grabbed her by the arm, escorted her to the hallway, then shut the door on her crying face. I stood by the door for a minute, listening to Sheena going down the steps and crying. Maria told me I was stupid and that I shouldn't go to whatever party Sheena was talking about. "You're a Latin king, pendejo. Why are you going to Rockwell and Potomac?" I didn't listen. I walked into the bathroom and continued getting ready. "I'm calling Morena and Cubana. Maybe they can talk some sense into your pendejo head," Maria said. I opened the door to the bathroom and yelled, "You better not call them," then slammed the door closed. It didn't matter what anybody said. Nobody knew Rosie like I did. Everything was going to be okay. Rosie and I were victims of circumstance. Because of the idiotic gang wars, it seemed like we lived in different worlds when we really just lived blocks away from each other. We had decided not to let other people's problems interfere with our love. It was now up to me. I had to make the next move. I could not miss that party. I continued to fix myself up. I was determined to show up at Rosie's party looking handsome and well-mannered. About 5 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. The first thing that came to my mind was that Sheena had told somebody about the party, and this person had come to stop me from going. I opened up the door to tell whoever it was that Sheena was lying. It was Sheena and her mother who were knocking. Sheena was still crying and hanging onto her mother's arm. Sheena's mother was a big burly woman. Her skin was dark, her lips big and full, and her hair was in an afro. The only feature Sheena had gotten from her mother was her big brown eyes. She asked to speak to my mother. I told her I didn't have one. In a very compassionate way, Sheena's mother explained to me that her daughter was not lying. She begged for me to listen to her because she was trying to save my life. This woman's demeanor mesmerized me. She was very soft-spoken, yet her words seemed loud with attention, deserving authority. I didn't want to hear what she was saying. As far as I was concerned, it was all bullshit. I blocked out Sheena's mother's words by thinking about how late they were all making me. I told Sheena's mother that her daughter was only acting this way because she liked me and was very jealous of my relationship with Rosie. Her soft-spoken ways disappeared in an instant. Listen, don't you flatter yourself thinking my daughter has the hots for you, Sheena's mother said angrily. My daughter is trying to save your life. You want to die? Fine. See you at your funeral. She turned around, held Sheena by the shoulders, and told her to just forget about me. Her exact words were, "Let's go home. You tried your best to save him. Now let's go get ready for his funeral." Finally, they're leaving, I thought to myself. Wait until I tell Rosie about this. Sheena, however, was persistent. She didn't want to go. She kept crying and begging me to believe her while her mother tried to lead her away. Sheena got loose from her mother, ran up to me, and hugged me tightly around the neck. Damn, she's going to wrinkle my shirt, I thought. Sheena held on to me for dear life. "We can drive you by Rockwell and Potomac so you can see for yourself." "Rosie is outside," Sheena said. "We can drive him, right, Mom? We can drive him." She still held on to me. Her mother hesitated at first but agreed, mainly to satisfy her daughter. Sheena's mother made it clear that I was to keep my head down and out of sight. "I don't want to become a victim of stupidity," Sheena's mother said, "so you better stay down." I agreed to the offer. "I need a ride to get me past the Cobras anyway, so thank you," I said. I believed Rosie's brother would help me with the disciples, but I still had to get past the Cobras. I knew Rosie would prove Sheena wrong by keeping her promise. We got in Sheena's mother's car and went west on Potomac. I sat in the back seat, crouched down to avoid being seen not only by the Cobras and the disciples, but also by the Lords. Sheena talked to me without looking at me. She said she could not believe that I thought she was lying to me. I responded by telling her that she was a beautiful girl, but that my heart belonged to Rosie. Her mother immediately jumped on my case. She did not appreciate that I thought her daughter was simply trying to break Rosie and me up. I told her that she could get mad if she wanted to, but it didn't change the facts. She commented about how Puerto Rican men were all stuck up in some macho bullshit that made no sense at all. I told her to look at her daughter and see how fine she was because of her Puerto Rican father. "I bet you didn't complain about Puerto Rican macho bullshit when you were making your daughter," I said with a smart alecky tone. I hit a nerve with that comment. Sheena's mother lost control and began yelling obscenities at me. Sheena interrupted her to tell me to look up and see Rosie. There she is. "Now do you believe me?" Sheena said. I eased my head in order to look out the window. Rockwell and Potomac had not changed much since I stopped hanging around there on my way to school. Gloria's candy store was still there, and it was still the main hangout. To the right of the entrance to the store was a doorway used to get to the upstairs apartments. There was Rosie, hugging and kissing a guy with a disciple sweater on. She was showing him the same kind of passion she showed me when we made love. She was wearing cut-off jean shorts and was wet from playing in the open fire hydrant on the corner. He had his hands all over her ass and was enjoying it. I felt like a fool. I began to realize that I was the party Rosie was throwing. Sheena's words echoed through my head. "She doesn't love you. She doesn't even like you. She's setting you up to be killed." I wanted to jump out and grab Rosie by the neck. The only thing that stopped me was the fact that there were about 40 to 50 disciples out there. It took about 5 seconds to pass Rockwell and Potomac, but it seemed like an eternity. I ducked down again and sat there lost in my own little angry world. Sheena and her mother were talking to me, but I didn't hear them. I asked Sheena's mother to drop me off at California and North Avenues. She wanted to take me to whatever my destination was, but I insisted she drop me off at California and North Avenues. I apologized to Sheena and her mother for doubting them, for being sarcastic, all of it, and got out of the car. Sheena got out with me. She said she was sorry and hugged me. I apologized to her again and told her I had to go do some thinking. She gave me her phone number and told me to call her if I needed someone to talk to. She got in the car and they drove off. I stood there like a statue until I couldn't see the car anymore and began walking towards Cadetsy and Armitage. Rosie opened my eyes to the seriousness and danger of gangbanging. Until that day, even with the gunplay I had experienced, gangbanging was nothing more than a game to me. But from this point on, however, things were going to be different. I used Rosie as my reason to become more ruthless, more careless. No one and nothing mattered to me. Rosie was, I think, the last person I ever trusted. At least I got a piece of pussy, I reasoned with myself, only to get depressed when I realized I wouldn't be getting any more. I was definitely experiencing an emotional overload, and I didn't know how to handle it. I couldn't count on my king and queen brothers and sisters. They would probably laugh at me or maybe discipline me. I didn't need either. I grabbed bottles and shattered them against the walls. I represented to any and all cars that carry passengers that looked like gang members. I hung my head down, lost in sadness, fighting tears, destroying myself from within. I desperately needed to get high. It was the only way to get Rosie off my mind.